Hi, this is Jeremy Tallman with T&H Realty Services. One of the more common questions I get from new landlords is, what if the tenant destroys my house? And it's certainly an understandable question. Everyone who's looked at being a part of our industry has heard the horror stories of tenants doing all this damage to properties, so I certainly understand the fear. And while there are no guarantees out there, I can tell you from our own experience that tenants destroying a house is not an overly common issue. And there are certain things you need to do if you're thinking about renting your home to help ensure that the tenant does not destroy your house. The first is proper tenant screening. Above anything else, placing a highly qualified tenant in your home will go a long way to ensure that you have a successful tenancy. Past performance is the best indicator of future performance. So you need to make sure that you do your due diligence and screen that tenant very thoroughly. Second, collect a deposit. May sound simple, but you always must collect a deposit for any time you rent a property. Even the most cautious and well-meaning tenants can do inadvertent damage to your property. So if that happens, you need to make sure you have a deposit on file to help pay for those damages after the tenant moves out. And the third thing is property visits. It's important that you visit your property occasionally to make sure that things are being handled correctly. For example, I would never enter into a renewal lease without visiting that property to make sure you're comfortable before you enter into a new contract with that person. And also leverage your vendors. So when maintenance is called by your tenant, then send the vendor out there and make sure they tell you if there's any problems going on with the property, such as smoking or unauthorized pets or things like that. So your vendors can be a tremendous resource if you use them correctly. So again, while there's no guarantees out there, taking a few precautions should give you a very good chance of having a successful tenancy. Now, if the tenant does leave the property in bad shape, let's say you did screen that tenant very well, but something happened, they lost their job, they're sick or something like that, and they left the property in bad shape. There are certain steps that you need to take to ensure that you get made whole. And it starts at the beginning. So when that tenant moves in, make sure that you document the condition of the property as it was the day they took possession. So that needs to be a document that's very detailed, that's signed by you, that's signed by the tenant, so everyone agrees that this is how the property was when the tenant took possession. Secondly, after that tenant moves out, you need to document that move out. So you need to be in the property, making notes of what damages were done above normal wear and tear by the tenant, take photos of that damage, and so make sure you have that all in a concise format because you may need that later on. Third, you have to serve your 45-day letter. In Indiana, within 45 days after that tenant vacates, you must serve them a letter if you're making any deductions for that security deposit for physical damage. So when you send that letter, you need to be very detailed into all the damages that you're deducting for that you feel are above normal wear and tear. And also we suggest providing that photo evidence in that letter so the tenant understands exactly why you made those deductions. So in that 45-day letter, if money's owed to you, so let's say that you have a $1,000 deposit, the tenant did $1,500 worth of damage, then you would need to set an expectation to that tenant as to when you expect for that $500 that's owed to you to be paid. If they fail to do that, the fourth thing you need to do is you have to file a claim. And that's typically done with an attorney. If you feel that the money owed warrants a claim for you to file a claim, then you would file that claim with an attorney. There would be a damages hearing, and the judge would make a determination of what they felt was fair for you to charge the tenant, and then award a judgment against that tenant for you. Sometimes the tenant will pay you after that judgment's been rendered against them. Sometimes they won't. And if that doesn't happen, the tenant doesn't pay you, then we suggest hiring a collection company who will use that judgment that then attach to the tenant's wages and start collecting that money for you over time. So again, while the tenant destroying your house isn't an overly common thing, there are certainly things you can do proactively at the outset of the tenancy to help ensure you have a successful tenancy, and there's also things on the back end you can do to help collect that money. If you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to contact us, and thanks for watching.